All right. Thank you, Amber. And now Dylan will be sharing a story with us about transitions from childhood to adulthood and awareness of those kinds of transitions.
Hi, my name is Dylan Jahn. Just for, I guess, like background information, where I grew up in Michigan, specifically like the small little city called St. Clair. If you look at Michigan on a map, you can see like a little mitten. It's like right here, like right under the thumb, like an hour away from Detroit. And essentially, when it's not like ice cold, 13 feet of snow, it's really pretty outside. It's really pleasant. It doesn't usually get too hot. It's a very bearable in like climate, I would say. And when I was younger, I used to essentially go out into the woods and just get lost for 8 hours. The woods were in like a confined area, and I think my babysitter viewed it as a way to entertain me without having to actually entertain me. I remember there were a few days where she'd just be like, "Do you want to just go out in the woods?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I do want to go out into the woods." And then I'd disappear for 6 hours, and I'd eventually come back. At the end, it was a safe thing because the only real sense of foreboding doom out in the woods was like a pond, but the pond looked gross. There was like slime everywhere and like algae, and I wasn't a fan of that, so I never went near it. Either way, when I was younger, I didn't quite realize it at the time, but the woods acted as a sort of like anchor for me. Whenever I was feeling like lost, distraught, whatever it may be as a child, whenever I was at my babysitter's house, I'd go straight into the woods. And I'd find some sense of peace, some sense of, I don't know, just serenity that I couldn't find out in, the real world. Because when you leave the woods, when you leave nature, there's cars, there's noise, there's television, there's people talking, and it's just hard to find that like quietness, if that makes sense. However, when I was around like the age of 10, my dad got a new job, and my family had to move. So essentially, packed up everything. I left the woods. I never really like said like a goodbye of any sorts, as weird as that sounds. And we just moved down to Tennessee, where the weather was completely different. It was always scorching hot. So like during the summer, it's like it goes between like 85 to 100, depending on how things are going that season. There's also just dangers in the woods. Like there's copperhead snakes. I'm deathly afraid of snakes. So as soon as I was told there were copperhead snakes, I said, not for me. I can't step a foot in those woods. The snakes will get me. I still have nightmares about it to this day of just like going out into like my family house's backyard, and then just suddenly there's 17 snakes just like slithering after me. It's not a pretty sight. Either way, I didn't realize it back after I had just moved there, but like I kind of lost, I don't want to say like I lost a sense of myself, but I lost like, there was a part of me that was like put in like hibernation mode, and I didn't realize this until like years later that it was in hibernation mode. Essentially, after we moved, I did the typical life. I had the typical life of like a 12, 13-year-old in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I'd go to school, I'd come home. We lived relatively closest to the mountains, but mountains are dangerous, like hilly, like deep drops, the snakes, as I said, all this other stuff. So I kind of just never really explored nature again. I never tried having that relationship with it again. And it was very much just like a distant relative that I never really spoke to again, or never really honestly thought of, unfortunately. Got to the point where like I was set in being like the modern day Dylan, for the lack of a better word, that was very heavily involved with technology. And I use technology in a similar lens to like as a form of escapism. It wasn't until I was an adult, so this was probably about like 2-ish years ago, so around like 23, where I went back to St. Clair to visit friends and family, and I realized like there was that part of me that was still like locked in place there that was starting to wake up. I like walked past my babysitter's old house. Unfortunately, she had moved, so I wasn't able to actually go into the woods. It was more of just like passing glances. And as soon as I like saw the like little like entrance into the woods that I'd go into, there was like a deep sadness that kind of like overtook me that I didn't really know how to deal with at the time. And I'm still like kind of working out to this day. But it was like one of those moments where it felt like I had just gone on like this major like hero's journey, for the lack of a better word. And I just come back and I was like looking at where everything started. And I started going through my life, like every step I made, where I went to school, where I went to undergrad, if I enjoyed what I was doing, my current career at the time, like all this other stuff. And it was kind of like a slap in the face because it made me realize that I absolutely hated what I was doing. I was working in corporate environment. I was constantly being monitored. Like I'm talking, my boss was like on my ass every single second for no reason. I was a great worker. I want that to be clear. And it was just one of those moments where even though I didn't have that connection with the woods anymore, I didn't go there anymore, it kind of still was there for me, just in a different way. And it just it's a nice thought to think of, I guess, just to know that like nature will be there for us if we allow it to be. Thank you.